Hello, everybody. This is John Yeager, Managing Director of Business Transformation Services at Bennett Thrasher, CPA firm in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here for another episode of Think Business, and I'm very excited to have a colleague and friend on the show, Adam Shapiro, head of his company is called SalesReformSchool. And we're going to talk about that love-hate topic that everybody always talks about, which is sales. Today, we're going to talk about how do you professionalize your sales team and process. So Adam, welcome to the show. And why don't you give us a little of your background and how you came to have a sales reform school?
Well, thanks for having me, John. Like a lot of people, I got canned in November of 2004. I'm like, okay, I don't want that to happen again. And it took me about 10 years to tell the story, by the way. When that happened, I was like, all right, what should I do next? Well, I had implemented sales process and with two sales teams and a marketing team. Consultant who was helping me out said, we haven't encountered anybody in the Atlanta area who knows us as well as you do, who knows how to do this thing called sales process and sales methodology. You should have your own business. I'm like, oh, what's that all about? It checked all the boxes on what I wanted to do. And 17 years later, here I am.
That's awesome. And you and I met through Vistage. We were in the same Vistage group and the trusted advisor groups. There's a lot of us who were independent consultants at the time who were doing things like you were doing. And I actually hired you to help me out when I got started to think about the sales process and how to message and those kind of things.
That's right. The Vistage community is a bedrock, if you will, of my customer base. Small, medium-sized businesses who are growing and thoughtful and realize, oh no, I'm hiring people or I have people on my team and I don't know what they're going to do when they go out and try to make sales. I've done all the hard work on branding. I've even put out some marketing, but it doesn't translate really to what salespeople are doing every day. But I know that has to happen. How do I do that?
Absolutely. So professionalizing your sales team and process, what does that mean?
Well, a lot of people say, hey, I'm growing. Your clients probably say the same thing. I need to hire salespeople. And I want to go out and hire a professional salesperson. And you're like, great, let's go find some experienced salespeople. And then you're like, what does that mean? You may not admit that to your client, or the client may not admit it to you that they really don't understand what it means to be a professional salesperson. So I like to think of a definition of professional salesperson or professional sales excellence, if you will, as the person who has the intersection of the following three things. They understand what a sales process for what they're about to sell or what they sell looks like, from first initiation, whether it was inbound or outbound, all the way through qualification and closing. And then qualification and closing could even be disqualification and parting as friends. But that's not enough. So they know their process. Well, they also have an idea on what they're going to say and do with each step of that process. Let's call that messaging. So they have the messaging down, what they're going to say, they're going to do, what they actually say and do within each step of that process. And then how they're going to recap even what went on in that sales process step. So they've got an understanding of process and they understand the messaging that has to go on with each step of that process. But there's a third piece to it, a third leg, if you will, or circle that intersects. And that's the disciplines that it takes to pull it all off. So I've come up with a set of 10 disciplines that excellent salespeople use to combine the messaging that either they've come up with or that their organization has come up with to enable them to pull off the sales process.
Well, that's a great description. So it's not just like the used car salesperson anymore.
It's not just a person who shows up and throws up. We actually know a lot of people who have two or three, and it's 2 or 3 doesn't get the job done. What happens is it go up and down. We know people who understand the process they should go through and understand how the disciplines to pull it off, but throw a new person into the mix and they don't know what to say. We know people who know what to say all the time. They know their process, but they don't have the disciplines around great listening skills, telling stories, asking the right questions, just shutting up when it's appropriate, and all these other sort of disciplines to pull it off so they're not always as effective. And then we know people who know how to pull it off. They're disciplined. They know what's going on. They even know their sales process, but they get into a new position and they can't figure out what to say and do because nobody's giving it to them. So you really need all three.
Absolutely. That's a great insight. And I'm sure the audience will really kind of dig into that. And we could talk later about maybe how they can get more information. But, I also, having kind of been in both sales and marketing of my career, there's a natural tension between the two. And a lot of times I've found that if marketing is one silo of the organization, sales is a different silo of the organization, there's a tension and they point at each other to say, it's your fault, it's your fault. How do you help organizations bring that together in a marriage?
So most organizations, when they think of marketing, they've done one or two or both of the following. They figured out their brand. What are we all about? What are our cultural values? Maybe even they dug a little deeper and said, what are differentiators? Why do people work with us? Or they've come up with product marketing collateral. So it's usually a junior person who has just written up what these new features, capabilities, things are that we sell without really understanding how it relates to their brand. Even in best companies, you have people who do both, but then don't know how to translate it to salespeople. So marketing puts together all this great brand information. They put together this great collateral that describes their information. They give it to salespeople, and salespeople put it aside. When we were going into offices, they would throw it in a circular file, the garbage can, or otherwise, because they're like, I can't use this. I can't go out and have a conversation with a flat piece of paper. Or you talk about brands, but I don't know how to have a conversation around our brand. So what's the best practice for an organization then is to say, okay, what do salespeople need that relates to marketing? Well, they need messaging. Remember that one of the three things that excellent salespeople have, they need to know what to say. Well, we can take what branding information a company has put together, what collateral they've put together to describe their products and capabilities. We can translate it into the conversations within each step of a sales process. That translation, if you will, is what I provide to my clients.
Gotcha.
What happens is as companies grow, eventually they realize, yeah, we need this. We need someone to lay down those standard operating procedures. So they hire in. Both of our customer bases are medium-sized companies. They have executives, they have workers, they have managers. They don't have that third level that says, hey, we got to document how this works. That's the sort of thing that needs to happen.
Absolutely. And that's where you would come in with your team to come in and say, let us help document this process. Let's help document the messaging. Let's help document, these three circles as you talked about, to really kind of get the process aligned and then have a process where you then train your people through that. And you have an onboarding process when you hire new ones to train them through that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And there's an easy rule of thumb that I like to go into when someone starts talking about their brand or who they are as a company. I'll say, how's that? Tell me a story about that. Well, we have great customer service. How does a salesperson go out and talk about customer service in a way that builds trust with their prospects? They either give a metric or they tell a story. When I say that to a marketing person, they go, oh, well, I have a 5-page white paper. And the salesperson says, how do I take a 5-page white paper and describe that in the 30 to 60 seconds that I have? And that's the job of a sales enablement, whether it's in a marketing department or in a sales department, is to get those two together and figure out what they need to give examples and stories and metrics around all those sort of things.
So you just raised a word, sales enablement. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So you just gave us a little high level definition. Maybe give us a story about what that looks like.
Sure. So I call it onboarding or inboarding. You've either already got people in-house who are out there selling for you, or you're about to hire new people to come in. Those folks need to be on the same page, whether it's inboarding, the people already have, get them. So I know what they're doing. You're a boss. You're an executive with your company. You now have people out there talking about what you do. It would keep me up at night to wonder, what are they saying? Are they saying it in an optimal way that will drive people to trust them and move along the sales cycle? Well, the only way to get comfortable with that is to draft it for them according to who the key players are they're going to talk to. So I've identified a set of foundational building blocks of sales enablement. We got to figure out our ideal client profile. Well, marketing is the people who know this information. So let's give it to sales. Within that ideal client profile, can we identify who the highly likely key players are that our salespeople are going to encounter so they know who to call on? And then we can start drafting messaging tools when they encounter each of those types of key players. And by the way, there's really three types of key players. There's the player that selects us. There's the player that funds us. And then there's the player that implements us. And in your business, it's the same thing. Now, smaller the business, there may be the same person wearing 2 or 3 of those hats, but we need to ask who they are. So marketing can help enable sales by identifying who the highly likely key players are they're going to interact with. Then we get into things such as what metrics to deliver to each of those key players, what stories to tell, what's our founding story or our founding story for this capability. How do we do it? What's our implementation story? Can we figure that out and draft it so that when someone says, wow, that sounds great, how do you do that? We confidently can give a 30 to 67 description of how that implementation story works, as opposed to fumbling it around. Well, shouldn't marketing be the ones figuring that out and then delivering it over to sales? Or marketing goes to sales and say, tell me how we do this. I'll draft it for you and we'll work on that together. And even before that, how do people buy from us? What's their evaluation plan look like? Can we draft that? So these are the sort of foundational building blocks to sales enablement that defines the term for a marketing team or for an executive team.
Gotcha. Yeah, you mentioned, having people out in the marketplace and are they telling the right story? They're telling the right message and those kind of talking to the right people. The other side of that for me is, are they, and maybe the same kind of story, but the message, but it is, are they going to bring me the right prospects? Right? Or do they know how to qualify? We talked about that earlier. Do they know exactly what we do and why we do it and who we do it for, so they can bring the right people to the door? Because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with people who really aren't qualified for what we do.
Not only that, but being able to describe who you work with is a way to build trust within your market. So if I said, and you and I both remember Mike Ween taught us the specific edge, this idea of we help people especially, but not exclusively. And that's a way to frame who we help. So like I said to you, I help especially, but not exclusively, Vistage type companies who are B2B, who are small and growing, small and medium-sized companies. They usually have between 6 and 24 people involved in sales, marketing, and delivery. So then I talk to a mega company who finds me and says, hey, can you help us? Yeah, I might be able to. But they understand that they're outside of my specific edge, especially, but not exclusively.
Absolutely.
By the same token, whenever a seller says, well, we help everybody, the buyer is like, yeah, but can they help me? Right? Because I'm unique. So it's a way to have conversations around this by designing who your ideal client profile looks like. Because remember, it's just a profile.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. It's funny, you have to allow people to think they're unique. Even though at the end of the day, in the back of your mind, you're not that unique. I learned that in my old days as an accountant. They would say, my business is really unique. And then go in there and go, still debits and credits. Yeah, there are some nuances, but it's kind of the similar, kind of thing. So I get that. Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. But this has been a great conversation and loved having you on. Good to see you again. Give the audience maybe 1 or 2 takeaway points that maybe you haven't talked about yet, if you have them, and then how can they reach you if they want to work with you?
Well, thanks for that. If you have people who are out there selling for you, whether it's business to consumer or business to business, you sell to another customer, it's not their fault if they fail if you haven't enabled them. So that's the first thing. I find too many executives are running around taking care of their urgent and important things, and they don't take a step back and say, how can I make sure this salesperson is successful? Or they haven't been successful. How is this my fault, not theirs? So and the answer to that question usually is, have you prepared them adequately? So that's the first point I would make, and I want to make sure that your audience sees that as well. And I know that you're involved in all the metrics and KPIs and all these things that drive a business and in reporting that. I wish sales management and executive management wouldn't get so caught up in the metrics, but more about, are they doing the right blocking and tackling to get things done and make sure things work? And then over time, as you start getting what I would call runway on using things such as I've described as sales enablement, then we can start layering in metrics and KPIs and things to see how it's working. I guess those are two things I would want your audience to keep in mind. You can reach me a lot of places on LinkedIn, Adam Shapiro. I have SalesReformSchool.com is my website. I will offer your audience 30 minutes of my time, no questions asked. All you have to do is find me on LinkedIn, Adam Shapiro, Sales Reform School. Send me a direct message. I'll send you my Calendly, and you can have 30 minutes of my time. I do that. I've been doing that throughout the pandemic. I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to, including a water treatment business owner in Saudi Arabia. So people all over the globe have reached out, and I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy meeting people and understanding what's going on in their business. So yeah, so salesreformschool.com, Adam Shapiro on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Did that Saudi Arabia company turn out to be a client?
They did not become a client, but I do notice that I do get a lot of social media impressions from him throughout time. Of course, it's 12 hours forward usually.
Thanks again, Adam, for being on the show. Great conversation. We appreciate you being here. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for watching. I'm John Yeager. I'm at john.yeager@btcpa.net or John Yeager on LinkedIn. Stay tuned for another episode and have a great day.